right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you guys all for joining us today. I just want to make sure is everybody, um, the chat is still going. We see we have quite a few people here with us this morning from all over. We have people from Zambia, looks like Oklahoma, North Carolina, Alabama, Congo, Oklahoma, Savannah, Georgia, Texarkana, Texas, all over. So we are excited to see all of you join us this morning for our first GMC Delegate Orientation for our 2026 General Conference. I am Diane Burnett, the Executive Director of Communications for the Global Methodist Church, and I'm just going to take a moment and introduce our guest to you today that will tell us a little bit more about what we all have in store for you. But a couple of things first, a couple of housekeeping. We will be utilizing the Q&A function for your questions today. So chat, feel free to keep putting in where you're from and use that as chat. We will be monitoring that as well. But for any questions that you guys have that might come up, if you guys would put those in the Q&A section, that's what we'll be working from to get those questions to ask our panelists today. And also, we want to be respectful of your time. So we have a lot of information that we're going to be touching on today. And so we want to answer as many questions. We've allowed time to answer those questions. But if for some reason we should run out of time, please do not fret. We will take all of those questions that we have not yet answered, and we'll put those in a document and get those answered for you and distribute as well. So don't worry, we want to answer all your questions. Hopefully we have the experts here on all things General Conference. I'm going to use that word very loosely, but we're all, still trying to figure some of that out. But hopefully we answer as many questions as possible as we can. But please know, we know that there is absolutely no way that we could fit everything that you need to know in an hour and a half. And especially this far out, we know that's going to continue to evolve. More questions and things are going to arise. And we definitely have a plan on how we can just continue to communicate that with you. We also want to note that there is a whole website dedicated, not donated, that would be kind as too, but dedicated to all things General Conference, and that is beautyofholiness2026.org. And so we will continue to put several informational and important pieces of information, videos, links to videos, all the things on that website as we continue to get them developed. And that will just be a resource for you as we get closer to General Conference. We also know that some of our brothers and sisters, English is not their preferred language. And so we will be taking this recording and actually dubbing it into the other 4 languages that are available through Riverside, which will be Portuguese, Spanish, French, and Korean. And we will have those links. Kiswahili is one that's not compatible with Riverside, but we will do our best to get that or maybe even a transcript dubbed into that language so that we can make sure all of our friends are able to get this information. So enough of me talking. I just wanted to give you guys the overview of what today is going to be. But let me introduce our guests. So first we have Tom Lambrecht, who is the General Conference Secretary, among many other titles that Tom wears. And so he will really be leading today because he is full of all the knowledge and things as it pertains to General Conference. But we also have Scott Pattison, who also wears a lot of hats, one being conference superintendent, but also he serves as the delegation lead for the Great Lakes Annual Conference. And so Scott is a wealth of information. And so we wanted to invite him into the conversation to just share from his perspective and things that could be helpful to all of you. And then we also have Becky Wood. Becky Wood is a new face to us this year when it comes to staff, but she is helping come alongside the General Conference Commission and really serves as our general conference. I would even use the term event project manager, to just make sure that from a logistic and project management side, our general conference has all the things tucked away that is needed, and has been very instrumental to helping plan and all the logistical pieces for General Conference, like I said, with our commission. We are so grateful for the work that our General Conference Commission put in, the hours and the time. We have an amazing team full of people that have a heart for the Global Methodist Church and this gathering, and have done amazing work under the leadership of Mike Grant, and I'm sure Mike is here with us as well. But we are just shout out to them. Also ask continued prayers for that body as they continue to do the work. But we also needed to limit our size for this so that we make sure we keep it under 4 speakers for the sake of dubbing and translation. Okay, so enough of me. I'm going to turn it over to Tom to give a little more details on what exactly we will be doing today. So Tom?
Thank you very much, Diane. It's so great to be here with our panelists, but also with all of you as delegates to the upcoming General Conference. We're excited to be able to anticipate what God is going to do in Johannesburg. We're excited to be there with all of you, and we're hoping that this day will give you important information that will help you as individual delegates and as a delegation to fulfill your responsibilities at the 2026 General Conference. As Diane mentioned, this is the very first orientation we've ever tried to do, and so I'm sure it won't be perfect, but we hope that it's helpful to all of you. We, as Diane mentioned, are experiencing your presence from all over the world, but there are a number of annual conferences who have yet to elect their delegation, and so this webinar is being recorded so that at any point people can watch it again. You can watch it again, or the people that get elected later can watch it when they are elected. So it's great to have the benefit of this technology, and we're just thankful for that. I'd like to thank my friends Becky Wood and Scott Pattison for participating in this orientation. Scott will be talking about how a delegation can function, sharing some of the best practices he has learned and used. And, we're mindful that some of you have served as General Conference delegates before, and you have a lot of experience and wisdom of that. But others of you, for this is a new experience. In fact, some of our delegates, you're new to the whole denomination of the Global Methodist Church. And so you're coming in at different points. And so as Scott is talking, if you have different thoughts and ideas, if you have experiences that you would like to share, we invite you to do that. You can do that through the chat or through the Q&A as well. We're hoping to gather best practices. Scott has done a great job of gathering that and putting together a good presentation I think you'll enjoy. But we know that others have ideas as well, and so we welcome whatever contributions you can make to that. Becky is going to be sharing some important information about logistics and registration, travel, and related topics. And then I'm going to come in third about some of the important tasks that each delegation will need to accomplish, along with the deadlines that you will all need to meet. And that's very important information that you'll want to stay on for. And we will have PowerPoint, as you can tell, and all those slides are going to be available as well after the webinar is over. So you'll be able to page through those slides and get whatever information you need from them as well. As we're speaking, we encourage you to feel free to ask your questions so that we can, at the end, have an opportunity to deal with anything that we haven't addressed already. So as Diane mentioned, use the Q&A factor for that, and we look forward to responding to whatever questions and needs that you bring up. So Scott, thank you so much for being with us today. Please go ahead and share what you've learned as a delegate and as a leader.
Well, thanks, Tom. Also, Diane, for putting this together. It's great to be on with Becky, and then Kristen's behind the scenes making all the magic work. And thank you for logging on. This is crazy. In this season, back in the day was 6 months ago, a year and a half ago. We all come at various places. And so, congratulations. Welcome to an important role. You are a General Conference delegate. Your local annual conference has entrusted you with the role of helping to build this new movement of Methodism. This is a new day, and God is doing a new thing. And you and I get to be a part of this important and special moment in time. I mean, just pause for a moment. Think about that. We're forming a new expression of Methodism, and we get to help build that and help form that. Now, we still have some critical work to do as we continue to form this new movement and this new expression. We have transitioned from being a part of mainline churches, and we're now helping shape and form this new movement of Methodism, which is increasingly theologically aligned with evangelical and Wesleyan holiness movements, and adding our voice to them. So for those who attended the convening conference in Costa Rica, we experienced a new way to do holy conferencing, to do general conference, than we have ever experienced before. And we need to keep that going. And so some things we need to know and we need to remember. As Tom shared, we each come with different experiences. Now, one thing to remember is you're among friends who share the same goal. We have that in mind, and we share similar stories. And we share similar experiences how we got here. So you're among friends. And let us start with the thought that we all want to be a part of a movement that helps each of us live and work and to be and make disciples of Jesus, who in turn makes disciples of Jesus Christ as we spread scriptural holiness across our globe. For those who have been at General Conference before, whatever that might have looked like, it's easy to let muscle memory of our past inform our future. We do not have to be in a posture of fighting, but rather one of discernment. Let's do what Brene Brown calls attributing positive intent to one another, and to think the best of our brothers and sisters who have been elected to serve and represent their conferences. Actually, we had a moment yesterday in our delegation meeting when one of our delegates reminded us of this very thing, and she just paused, and we had the chance to collectively remember that as we were talking and discussing. Now, together we will be discussing and choosing legislation, methods, and modalities that we will implement over the next 6 years. If there are disagreements, they will likely involve adjustments in methods rather than wholesale theological change. And we need to remember that because that's not always been in our experience in the past. And remember, you and I are amongst friends who share the same goal in mind, and we will pray, discern, and work together. We do not need to come with an adversarial posture, but rather one of camaraderie as sisters and brothers in Jesus Christ, living and working together so that God's kingdom may come on earth as it is in heaven. And actually, let us take opportunities leading up to General Conference to work together, pray, and talk and share. This has been a practice of your conference superintendents in the formation, as well as we currently work together. We as conference superintendents work together. We ask each other for help and genuinely care and respect for one another as we serve together as we're continuing to form our annual conferences. One of the conferences, when I reached out and I asked for help amongst my brothers and sisters who are conference superintendents, I said, hey, as I'm preparing, what are your thoughts? What are your practices? And one conference shared that they are spending a great deal of time discerning how to prevent the institutional governance model that we operate under from pushing us into becoming overly institutional at this early time of our movement. Friends, that is our task with this general conference. And so let us remember the importance of spiritual preparation and how we do that. Friends, this is a spiritual call. And some who are much more active-oriented are like, let's just hurry up and get going. But let us take this lull of waiting and let us prepare for it spiritually as well as legislatively. We will discuss the details of the event's preparation today, but let us not forget that we first must prepare ourselves spiritually. We are called even more in this season to be salt and light. I like how Eugene Peterson shared in Matthew 5:13 and 14. He says, we are here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth, and to be light bringing out the God colors in the world. That's what we get to do. So let us make sure to spend time alone with God, not only to pray, but to listen. Soak yourself in scriptures, alone and in groups. Be in a small group, a class, or a band, so that you have those around you to pray for you, to help prepare you, and maybe even allow the Holy Spirit to smooth off some of the rough edges that the flow of God's Spirit in the community only can do. So let's make sure we're putting things in our minds and lives that help us renew our minds, as Romans 12:2 reminds us. To let God transform us into a new person by changing the way we think. It's a new movement. And so we need to use those new thoughts as God is leading us into this new expression. Then we will learn to know God's will for us, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Let us be a part of a worshiping community and worship regularly, even weekly. Let us live as we prayerfully attune to the Holy Spirit, beginning each day in prayer, listening to God's Spirit and others around us, and loving God extravagantly and our neighbors practically. Let us spend time praying together, maybe even worshiping together as a delegation. And so we want to make sure we prepare ourselves spiritually. Now on to some pragmatic aspects of the life of a delegation. You will hear multiple times to go to the Beauty of Holiness 2026 website, as you already have, and you'll hear more of that today and going forward. I want to express my gratitude to my fellow conference superintendents who shared many of these best practices. Feel free to use these and view them more as tools in a box that you can select as the best ones that fit your context. Because when we think around our world, across our denomination, our delegations are made up of various sizes. Some are spread out geographically, and others can meet more in person more easily. Some have better access to technology, and others do not. We all have members with various levels of experience in these matters. Listen for the questions and the wisdoms of all. Remember that our members have a kaleidoscope of personalities, and each is needed. There are introverts and extroverts, as well as internal processors and external processors, all over the world. And actually, that's a good thing. And so we want to make sure that we let all have a voice in our delegations and amongst ourselves as we meet. Many delegations are including all elected delegates, alternates, and reserves in all the conversations at this point to gather a broad perspective to obtain the full input. Now, there are various ways of selecting the leadership of your delegation. For some, your bishop may have led this process at your annual conference or another gathering, and for others, you are doing that as you are elected and forming, because not all are fully formed at this moment. There is wisdom in having both laity and clergy in leadership rather than just one or the other. Now, some may vote for each role, chair, vice chair, secretary. This enables you to lead from a team approach rather than relying solely on one person. Schedules are going to get complicated from now to August 30th, and so we need to make sure we build a deep bench so that we can be there. When selecting delegation leads, some organizations use the first elected layperson and the first elected clergy member as the chair and vice chair. For instance, some delegations' first elected layperson served as the chair, and the first elected clergy member served as the vice chair for the convening conference. And at this general conference, that is reversed. Some may form a tradition of rotating the chair at each general conference in that manner. So discuss amongst yourselves and agree on the process as a group. This is also part of that forming nature of your delegation. In our delegation, we have also added the secretary that assists in the details and administrative tasks, and I found that to be very, very helpful. For our delegation, we like the team approach. The three of us meet to discuss the meeting agendas and the procedures, as well as determine who will be responsible for what task, and that team approach really makes it work very well. Also, I encourage you to use various forms of technology. We use the Google Workspace in our conference, and others use Microsoft Teams environment. We have WhatsApp groups and a delegation group email to assist in our communication. We record and we share our meetings for those who are unable to attend. We have a shared Google Drive set up for our teams to upload and access through their thoughts and their works. And when we move into the legislative times and the discussions, they can share that, and we'll have that set up for everybody to access and to upload. For those with technology challenges, finding what works best for you is essential. I think this may even be a great time to work with your partner conferences, for there may be help through them. So don't feel like you're all by yourself. We're in this together. Now, when you set up meeting schedules, we're in that lull. We're waiting. It's going to get busy come January. So set meetings for a regular schedule and a rhythm. Begin with the end in mind and refer to the dates on the 2026 timeline plan of organization, delegation, allocation numbers, and process on the Beauty of Holiness website. It has all the dates and everything that you need. And so schedule your delegation meetings as far in advance as possible so that they are on a delegate's they're on the delegates' calendars, because calendars are going to fill up quickly. I continue to be amazed when we do a doodle poll and we can never find one time that works for everybody. Currently, some are meeting monthly on a Zoom to build better relationships, to get to know one another. Especially with our lay delegates, it helps on-ramp those who may be new. Once we enter into January, the pace is going to pick up very quickly, and we will meet more often. Some share that they will meet 2 or more times a month via Zoom. Find a good day. We could not find a good day that works, so we have 2 days. So when we map out ours, we're going to utilize those 2 different days over the course of the months, so we allow everybody at least equal time to be together. Some are planning on meeting in person at their annual conferences this coming year. Make sure you talk to your planning team so that they know that you're doing that. Again, for those with technology challenges, finding what works best for you is essential, and utilize your partners that are able to help out as well. Now, organizing the delegation according to the needs to be accomplished. There's nominations to committees, councils, and commissions, participation in the Episcopal election process. We have some tasks that are set for us to decide and to share. So be aware of the 2026 timeline, plan of organization, and delegate allocation and process on the Beauty of Holiness website. When it comes to sharing nominees for the various committees, councils, and commissions, we share those options with people. Not everybody knows this is new language, and so we share it often because sometimes it's just hard to get those thoughts on all those things and what they mean. Discuss them. Ask for those who feel led to serve in different areas. We're letting our delegation be familiar with those and pray through those. We also have used a document that outlines the tasks and decisions required along with the time frames so they can begin to get through that. For each, we allow people to self-nominate, and we also seek additional suggestions. On the time frame for nominations to administrative committees, we have till February 2nd, 2026, so we still have some time. For nominations for general church commissions and committees, we have till March 3. Participation in our delegation meetings and discussion and discerning is all part of that process. Now, helping delegates pick legislative committees' preference is important. When it comes to the legislative assignments, one of the practices we've used, and I know others have used that, is that we ask our delegates to choose 3 areas that interest them. And then our leadership, the chair, vice chair, and secretary, discern the results and work on alignment, and then discuss the teams before assigning the various roles. That lets us look, because sometimes people will say, well, I want to do this, and then there's a bunch on one area, but not very much on the other area. So it allows us to make sure our team is well represented and that we have all the bases covered with people who can do that work. Others may be limited in their delegate numbers, so choosing who will own or take responsibility for each area is going to be important. But being able to say who is doing that, not only to show up in those pre-legislative meetings, but also owning and living in and praying through all of the different areas. Helping the delegates prepare for understanding of the petitions. Now, once we have divided the delegation into those who will serve on specific legislative teams, those serving in those areas become what I call the resident experts. They're the ones who are deeply familiar with the details of the respective areas. This is overwhelming for anybody. And so to think one person can hold all of the details is just not realistic. Now, there may be a few that can, but the average person is not going to be able to do that. And so having different ones on your delegation who really own those things, live in them, read them, talk to, communicate. We schedule future delegation meetings, and when we discuss them, these people lead those conversations because they're our resident expert. They're the ones that are owning that. They're the ones that are going to be representing us in the legislative time. This is where scheduling with the end in mind is very helpful. How do we make sure we have time to discuss and be aware of all of those? If there's a person on your delegation who loves spreadsheets and organizing, and I'm sure there are, if not, there are people in other delegations that can help as well. I've seen people take this vast collection of petitions and allocate them into spreadsheets in different areas. Some will go through and rank them in various orders. This is when you see the gift of the makeup of the people on your delegation. We may also consider sharing information amongst delegations when the tasks are completed. Remember, we're amongst friends. We already have some natural connecting and communication points. So communicate and utilize your bishop, your conference superintendent, your partner conferences. We are doing that as conference superintendents, that we meet monthly in the cohort of the conference superintendents I'm with our bishop. I know one of the conferences that is wrestling with guiding values and how we all can work together ahead of time. Not necessarily deciding individual petitions, but establishing a value-based ethos where we know how to make decisions. Like, does this need to be done exactly the same for every global Methodist in the world for the next 20 years? And if the answer is no, it probably doesn't need to be added to the Book of Doctrine and Discipline. Maybe it's just a best practice. If we're going to be a global church, is there a way to collaborate on building that kind of global ethos ahead of General Conference? And so we work together in talking and understanding. Helpful hints for understanding and deciding the Episcopal process. This is one that's taking a lot of energy. This is a discernment guide. There is a discernment guide to help with this process of selecting these 3 decisions that we're going to be asked to make as delegates. And it's on the Beauty of Holiness 2026 website. The election process that we agreed to in Costa Rica is new, and we are all learning. We just had our presentation yesterday at our delegation meeting, and it's a lot, and we've mapped out a time frame to be able to walk through this and to work through this as we discern. This new process is designed to help us discern, discuss, and select the best qualified person to serve in that role over the next 6 years. And so take the time to discuss, consider these decisions carefully. Allow that process. Don't feel like we have to have information and vote at one meeting. Allow the time of discernment. You have internal processors that need additional time rather than just processing it in the moment. Well, they're all related. Consider spacing out the decisions that we have. We have till March 15th to submit our delegates' choices. And so technically it's May 15th is the deadline for sending the names, but the committee prefers to have them by March 15th. And yesterday at our delegation, we presented that process. And we're having our delegation's vice chair, who is also the laity lead our conversation for our delegation in this, because one of the decisions involves clergy. And so we want to make sure that we are running through this. And so our lay, who is our vice chair, is guiding this conversation in all aspects of it. We will also share our jot forms over the next few months, allowing us to focus more effectively on each decision. I would also recommend, and I know some conferences are using jot forms or emails to start gathering the necessary data. I've heard from various conferences that this allows for your delegation to send your thoughts on those decisions, what conferences to align with, who may be good to serve in the area Episcopal Committee, who may be good as an Episcopal nominee from your conference or from another conference. This allows you to gather the information first without discussing names to ensure all voices are heard at equal volume. We're all doing this to ensure the internal processing of the introvert can be heard at the same volume as the external processing extrovert. We're also asking, along with the names, I think, which is a critical piece of data, why this name? Why this conference? Or why this person? That's helpful to begin to help the delegation think through with you and talk about it. These will be collected, and the order will be determined by the number of the submissions received. That data then will be served as a starting point for the conversations and discernment amongst our delegation when we begin to meet in earnest in January. For the 2 questions where people are being asked to select, it also allows someone from the leadership of the delegation to call those names, see if they're willing to serve before a vote has already been taken. It just gives you time to process and to think through and allow the Spirit to work in that time as well. Of the choices and decisions for this process, the one I'm hearing giving the delegations the most unease in selecting the potential conferences to share and how and why. Some things to consider, and there's some great questions in the information that's been given in the discernment guide. This will be the first time we actually experience general superintending bishops who are serving full-time within a reasonable number of conferences. We have the role of conference superintendents, and we're still living into the relationships and the roles that these play with our general superintending bishops. Be thinking through and asking, what can be the benefit with blank conference? Does it really matter? If yes, then why? If not, why not? What about the geographical closeness? Are there things that complement us? Does it help us to have conferences close, sharing the same bishop? What about our partner conferences? Does it make sense to share a bishop with our international partners? Is there consideration for U.S. or non-U.S. partners? What about those who are not geographically close to us? What does that do? How does that help us? So be thinking of all of the various aspects. Now, some helpful hints for the life of a delegate. As you think about what it means to be a general conference delegate, there's a lot of things that are happening. Managing oneself during general conference, as well as leading up to that, some practical hints as well as some spiritual hints. One is pay attention to the practical. As Diane reminded us, we are a global movement. We're still learning how to do just that. So listen and enjoy the complexities of a worldwide church. Now, much of what we do will be in English. That will get translated into various languages, even this presentation. But this is done for those whose native language is not English. They may not be listening and processing information at the same rate as those who have English as their first language. Now, we need to remember this is a feature, not a hindrance. We need to be able to take time and allow that time to pause. As we're gathering in our meetings, our sisters and brothers are running English, that one English sentence, through 2 to 5 language filters to get back to English to respond. And those of us who speak English, and many of us only English, and our brothers and sisters who are speaking multiple languages and they're trying to process that is something we genuinely have no clue about. And so as we're gathering and as we meet and as we're at General Conference, this also allows us to journey and process this together. I have learned so much from our international sisters and brothers, and as they have shared that they're simply processing this, and it's easy to read the silence of the room as, oh, we're all done, we're ready to go, and we move forward, when really our brothers and sisters are at their third language, getting to their mother language, so that they can go, what does that mean, to process it back? And so we need to allow the various languages and cultures to inform us, not just for external and internal processors, but for everybody. And so asking all, letting that pause, going around the room, inviting people, because I think what happens at times is the international brothers and sisters just feel like, well, they've already moved on and it doesn't matter. And this is an important time that we invite all voices in this global movement. That's just something we're not accustomed to. And so we want to make sure we function globally and invite the deep conversations. There's wisdom, there's guidance, and we need to make sure we hear everybody. Now, personally, we're entering in about a 1.5-year time frame from now to August 30th and going through that week. It's easy to overlook sleep, diet, and exercise as we lead up to and during the General Conference. And so I just want to invite you to treat this like an athlete or a musician would treat their disciplines. Start now and build healthy habits and routines. Try to keep them while at General Conference. It's over a year away. So start now and try to do this. Sleep, sleep, sleep. It's easy to say, well, I'll just stay up and I can push through this. It's over a year. So we need to continue to make sure we can be healthy. Eat healthfully. Get exercise. Move regularly. Hydrate. When you're coming to General Conference, bring water bottles. Now, when you think about packing, and some of you have already started thinking through that, comfortable clothing and shoes, a good backpack or a tote, a working battery backup charger for your phone and tablets, paper and other writing utensils, folders and binders. One conference noted that they have decided to make a better effort to rotate out delegates to the alternatives more than often than they did in 2024. And doing that intentionally as a general rule. And so start now and just kind of keep a tickler list. If you have room in your house or your office, begin to just put those things there. It's easy to say it's a year and a half away for the people that process in the moment. And for the planners, you've already started. So be mindful. Talk amongst yourself as a delegation to be able to learn, what are we doing? Hear thoughts that'll help prompt other things. Now, there's some other helpful thoughts. There will be additional trainings and onboarding, including connectional conversations and parliamentary process training for all legislative committees. You're not alone, and we're all in this together. So remember, we're not adversaries, we're working as partners. And many are not used to having that training when we use the word General Conference and working together. But we're brothers and sisters with the same goal in mind as we form this new movement of Methodism. Now, another thing I want to invite you to think about toward General Conference 2032. You may consider, as a conference, putting 1/6 of the total cost of sending your delegation back each year to fund General Conference 2032. One of the values and one of the practices our conference has is that we do not want costs to keep people from participating as a delegate, representing and going on behalf of our annual conference. And so we have paid for that. And as we plan for the next general conference, we are building into each of our annual conference budget for each annual year 1/6 of that, so that when we get going up to General Conference, we can fund our delegation there as well. We have used our reserves for this General Conference, and we're using this practice of putting money back to prepare for the next General Conference, because we believe that it's very important that everybody gets a chance to participate. And as an annual conference, we're making that not only a value, but a practice. It's exciting to be able to do this together. And I can't wait to see what God continues to do, not only at General Conference, but also the process of getting up there. It's a joy to be doing this along with you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Scott. We really appreciate your being with us and all of the thoughts that you shared with us and your experiences and what you've gathered. That's very helpful. Let's turn now to Becky Wood, who's going to talk about some of the nuts and bolts of how we get there and what it's going to look like. So, Becky?
Hello. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Please allow me to share some information with you regarding some of the logistics of General Conference 2026. As Diane mentioned, the General Conference Commission has been well underway over the last year preparing for General Conference 2026 in Johannesburg. And so let me share some of the details that have been forming as we begin looking towards that time. I just wanted to just speak, Scott. I wish we still had a year and a half before General Conference, but we only have 9 months. So, put your seatbelts on because we have a little bit less time than what I think sometimes we wish we still had. But we are just about 9 months, a little over 9 months away from General Conference 2026. Registration is already open, but it is being available in phases. This allows for us to handle matters that may arise more individually without overwhelming our registration concierge, Ginger Barbie, and also our travel partner, Uniglobe. So you can see here on the slide the schedule of the release of invites for registration. Delegates and conference superintendents, that registration is scheduled to open on December 10 of this year, and you will receive in an email invitation to go to a link that will allow you to register for General Conference 2026. And that link within that email will take you to that form, and you will just follow the form, the prompts within the form that will take you through that registration process. For those that have already begun to register, they're finding it an easy, navigatable process, and so we hope as you get to that point, you'll experience the same. Let me speak to the U.S. delegates for a few minutes here, and then I'm going to also speak to the other delegates. I'm going to kind of move back and forth. But there are the General Conference, Convening Conference of Costa Rica, did put some things in place that we are implementing as it comes to registration and some details, General Conference. And so I want to specifically speak to the U.S. delegates for a minute. You must have a current passport. The expiration date on that passport cannot be before December 31st of 2026. And you'll need that in order to register. Again, you'll have an opportunity within the registration system to take a photo of your passport, but also to upload the details of your passport. So it's important that you have a current passport, a valid passport that does not expire before December 31st, 2026. If you do not have that, I encourage you to get busy in applying for that. And when you have that in your possession, to then go back into the registration system and register. Um, the registration is also going to provide you an opportunity to consider extra programming options, like being a part of the GC26 choir or being a part of the mission experience throughout General Conference, as well as some tours that are being offered by one of our sponsors, Educational Opportunities. We encourage you to carefully consider your involvement in any of these because they will have an impact on your travel. So we want you to think about those within your registration process. It will allow you an opportunity to indicate if you would like to be engaged in any of these, and then there will be follow-up from those organizational leaders or those team leaders for your involvement in that. If an annual conference has requested a specific hotel for your conference, we are working on accommodating those requests on a first come basis and ranking of the hotels in which you've requested, along with availability of room types. Your registration will indicate the hotel in which you have been assigned based on these requests. Again, I'm speaking to the U.S. delegates. You will, however, need to indicate in the registration process in the hotel reservation the type of room that you are wanting to select if those have not been provided by your conference. Once you've completed the registration process, it will provide a summary to you, and we ask that you carefully review that summary before you hit the submit button for your registration. Upon registering, you will receive a registration confirmation that'll be sent to the email that you indicated during registration. For your hotel confirmation, we just ask that you please allow up to 72 hours to receive your hotel confirmation. If you don't receive that within that 72 hours, we're going to ask you to reach out again to Ginger Barbie, and she's G Barbie, BARBEE at globalmethodist.org, and she'll help you with that. Travel for U.S. delegation. In your registration confirmation, you will be given a link to a booking form where you'll provide information for your travel preferences. Again, please do not complete this booking form until you have taken the time to think through your travel plans. So, for example, if you plan to do any missions work pre or post general conference in Africa with one of our partners, you'll need to indicate this in your booking form. And that's important. So we encourage you to do that. If you plan to attend one of the education opportunity tours, you'll need to know this for your booking form. So those are important things to consider and kind of have a plan before you do your booking form. We do want to let you know that any of you that are part of frequent flyer programs, you are not only able to use frequent flyer points, you also can earn your frequent flyer points. And again, the booking form will give you an opportunity to provide that information in that process. We just want to let you know that any changes to your initial flight plans will be the financial responsibility of the individual making the changes. The GMC and or the annual conference will not be responsible unless there's an error on our part. So know that. As I mentioned, Uniglobe is our travel partner who will help you make the arrangements for your flights, and they'll work with you. They're a great team. They were our travel partner for Costa Rica, and again, have been chosen for the next general conference. And so lean into them. They're available to us. And when you initially get the link to that big booking form, you can provide all of the information, and then their team will contact you and work with you individually for your flight arrangements to Johannesburg. U.S. delegates are scheduled to arrive on Thursday, August 28th, with a departure on Sunday, September 6th. Again, you're not required to arrive on Thursday, August 28th, but that is the first window of opportunity that we have rooms assigned for the U.S. delegation. Airport transfers are going to be arranged using our travel partner Uniglobe. So we ask that if you're unable to use our travel partner for whatever reason, you will need to make your own individual airport transfers from the airport to your hotel. But if you are arriving within the window of the Gautrain, which is a transfer from the airport to the Santon train station, which is just there where our 5 key hotels are, those arrangements will be made for you. You will be greeted at the airport by some of our great hospitality team who will be providing for you a Gautrain card that you will need to use for your airport transfers. Hold on to that card. It's important that you keep that card in your possession because you will need that card in order to have your return transfer on the 6th from the hotel back to the airport. If delegates' travel does not allow them to arrive within the operating window of the Gautrain, again, we're working with Uniglobe and other ground transportation for arranging that shuttle for you from the airport to the hotels, and we'll provide more of that information to you as we have the travel manifest and know when people's arrival are. Annual conferences for U.S. delegation. Again, I just want to remind you that you're going to be invoiced post general conference for hotel rooms. On this, you will see the $1,000 per person credit that has been offered generously to each of the U.S. delegates for their hotel. And so that $1,000 per person credit will be used on your invoice or shown as a credit on your invoice. If there is a zero balance or even a credit, the conference will not be invoiced. So just so those of you as conference superintendents or delegation leads know that's how we'll be handling the $1,000 credit per person for towards a hotel in Johannesburg. For those of you outside the US, delegates, let's talk a little bit about your registration. Again, you too, upon being reported as a delegate after December 10th and on from there, you'll receive an email based on, again, that email will come from the email that has been reported for you as a delegate, and you too will have a link to go to the registration system for General Conference 2026. Again, just follow the prompts within the registration system. You too need a valid passport, or those of you from South Africa will need a valid South African identification card, which will be required for you to register. Delegates outside the U.S. will have no hotel charges, but will be required at your time of your check-in when you arrive in Johannesburg to provide a credit card for the incidentals. So as you go through your registration process, you will not be prompted in the same way that our U.S. delegation will be for hotels and that type of thing. We just want to help you understand that, again, a valid passport is also required for you with an expiration date no sooner than December 31st of 2026. And for those of you who reside in South Africa, you'll need to provide a valid South African identification card at time of registration. Again, if you don't have one of these, please go ahead quickly and apply for your passport or South African identification card. And upon receiving that, you can go to the link that will be provided in the upcoming email to go ahead and register for General Conference 2026. Two, as you go through the registration process, you will also have an opportunity to consider extra programming options like being a part of the GC26 choir, missions experience, and educational opportunity tours. And once you have completed your registration, you too will have a summary that will come up, and we just again ask that you review that very carefully before submitting. A registration confirmation will be sent to the email that you provide during registration. And for just confirming your hotel assignment, please allow up to 72 hours for you to receive that confirmation before reaching out to Ginger Barbie. In your registration confirmation, you too will have a link to the booking form where you will provide your travel information and preferences so that Uniglobe can reach out to you and make those arrangements with you. Again, keep in mind if you are going to do any mission work pre or post conference or participate in any of the other extra programming opportunities, you will need to know this and indicate this on your booking forms. Again, a reminder that any changes to the initial flights made through Uniglobe will be your individual financial responsibility and not that of the GMC or the annual conference unless the error is on our part. So we just really, both U.S. and those outside of the U.S. that are serving as delegates, we just want you to carefully consider your travel. Again, we have plenty of time to make arrangements for that. You have plenty of time to make arrangements for that with Uniglobe. So don't feel harried or hurried if you want to say in order to do your booking form. You have time to do that and to work with Uniglobe for your travel. So make sure that you're thinking about when and how you'll arrive for those types of things. Delegates from outside the U.S. are also scheduled to arrive in Johannesburg. As we've indicated, there's a schedule. Again, depending on if you serve on General Conference Commission, active bishops, GMC staff, key volunteers, those individuals will be arriving on August 26th. Next year, those of you that are remaining General Conference Commission members outside of the U.S., the Council of Appeals, other volunteers that are arriving from 3+ time zones away, we have you arriving August 27th, and then all delegates plus all alternates as well as our emeriti bishops and remaining volunteers and exhibitors will be arriving on the 28th. This allows for everybody that is wanting to participate in the mission experiences that will begin on August 29th. And so we want to get everybody on the ground in Johannesburg no later than the 28th, for those delegates and alternates that wish to participate in the mission experience on August 29th. And then there'll be others that'll be our invited ecumenical guests, our sponsors, observers, and guests will be invited to arrive on the 29th, so that we're all there in Johannesburg ready to start with a great beginning on August 30th. Airport transfers, as I said, will be arranged for those using our travel partner Uniglobe. If Uniglobe is not used, GC26 will be unable to provide any airport transfers because we will be working off of the manifest that is provided to us by our travel partner Uniglobe. Again, we are looking to utilize the Gautrain, which is a train system that will transfer you from the airport to the Sandton train station, which is within walking distance to all 5 of our hotels. But there also will be shuttles, hotel shuttles that are available there if you have limited walking or too much luggage that you don't want to roll down the street to your hotel. But we will work off of the Uniglobe manifest for our airport transfers. And again, you'll need to hold on to that Gautrain card for the duration of General Conference so you can get your return travel. Let's just jump into hotel reservations just for a minute so I can again clarify some of this. Upon arrival to Johannesburg, we invite you to make your way directly to your hotel and check in. There will be no room cost on site for you to take. That will already be covered if you are a GMC Pay delegate, or that will be invoiced if you are a US delegate and come under your conference. But everyone will be asked to provide a credit card upon check-in for incidentals. If you do not have a credit card available to you or wish not to provide that, that's fine. You just need to know that you will be restricted in any additional charges at your hotel for the restaurant, for room service, laundry service, anything like that. For those of you as U.S. delegates and alternates arriving on the 28th, you can see the 5 hotels that are provided. These have all been vetted by Conference Direct, who the General Conference Commission has been working with over the last year, and multiple members of the GCC and staff have conducted site visits for each one of these hotels. We're really thrilled about the hotels that are going to be hosting us, and they're excited to be hosting us. And so that's fun. But you can see the charges for that's a 9-night stay based upon the days of General Conference and arriving on the 28th for those of you that are U.S. delegates. And for you as conference superintendents, you can see that. Again, this is for U.S. delegates and alternates. Those of you that are delegates from outside of the U.S., you will be assigned to your hotel, and that will show in your hotel confirmation, but none of these expenses will pertain to you, as it was voted that all delegates and alternates outside of the U.S. would be covered by the GMC. There is a limited number of the type of rooms that are available in each of the hotels, and so those things will need to be taken into consideration as you make your hotel arrangements, especially those of you that are U.S. delegates. Regardless of where delegation stays, all 5 hotels are fantastic, and they're very safe options. As we prepare to send our invitations for registration, we want to give each of the U.S.-based delegation that opportunity, as we talked about, to request a particular hotel that you wish to stay in. And those options will come up as you go through your registration as well as your hotel reservations. Again, a conference superintendent, if you were unable to report to us or do your request for your conference, all staying in a similar hotel or same hotel, we ask that you'll reach out to myself or again, Ginger Barbie ASAP, as that was due on November 14th. We need to have that in place in order to make those arrangements prior to our registration invitations going out December 10th. Delegates from outside of the U.S., your hotel accommodations, as I said, are paid for by the GMC, and your hotel reservations are pre-assigned and will be indicated to you in your registration summary. All delegates from outside of the U.S. will either be assigned to the Santon Sun or to the Garden Court. The Santon Sun is directly connected to the Convention Center by the Sky Bridge, and the Garden Court is a matter of opening the door, going outside, walking across the street, opening another door, and going into the Convention Center. So they're both very, very close to the Santon Convention Center. Delegates from outside the U.S. will have roommates, so costs to the GMC can be kept at a minimal. You can indicate during registration if you have a preferred roommate who is also a delegate. If there is no indication, the system will match you with a roommate and you'll be notified of that. So GC 26 registration in Johannesburg it will be at the Santon Convention Center. So again, once you have arrived in Johannesburg, we encourage you to make your way to your assigned hotel and just to relax, to sleep if necessary. If you're coming in late at night, on-site registration will begin with limited hours on Thursday, August 27th for those that have already arrived for pre-conference meetings and volunteering. And registration, again, will be at the Santon Convention Center. On-site registration hours will be communicated as they are determined based upon the schedule of arrivals of guests for GC 26. I just want to, Scott mentioned this earlier, and I just want to come back to it for dress and attire. We want that to be comfortable. Dress comfortable. We here as Westerners call it business casual. Just comfortable, modest, and culturally appropriate clothing will be encouraged. We suggest that you have a sports jacket for the men or a light sweater for the women in case the temperatures within the meeting rooms is too cool. We discourage wearing of any kind of clothing that makes a political statement of any kind. Many will choose to wear uniforms representing their local churches or conferences, and we welcome that. We especially want to invite everyone who would like to consider wearing celebratory clothing for our celebration of Africa Night on the Wednesday evening of General Conference, September 2nd. This will be a great celebration, and we will encourage you to dress festively for that evening. Johannesburg, their time zone is the GMT +2. And so just keep that in mind with all of your arrangements and being in Johannesburg. We just want to quickly talk about tipping. Again, in restaurants, good service, we're going to encourage you to leave a 10 to 15%. Other services like room service, house cleaning, etc., is a 10%. We want our event in Johannesburg, that when we leave, we have left a blessing, that those that serve us are glad that we've been there, not sad that we've been there. And so we just encourage you as individuals as well as conferences, however you're working out the cost for these type of things, to take in consideration a tipping factor for those that are going to kindly serve us during our time that we're there. Per diems for delegates outside of the U.S., a daily per diem will be given to you at time of on-site registration. This daily per diem is recommended at $65 a day to cover your meals, both travel as well as while you're at General Conference. And so, again, for those of you serving as delegates from outside of the U.S., that will be given to you at registration on site. And then again, we encourage those of you that are U.S. delegates or conferences working with your delegates that you also try to provide or work through that per diem recommended at a $65 a day for the Johannesburg area. Meals provided. We are glad that we're going to be able to provide some meals. Breakfasts will be provided every day in each hotel. Lunches will be provided daily at the convention center during the days of the General Conference, August 30th through September 5. And then we also will be including some evening dinners. We have 2 evening dinners that'll be included for everyone during our legislative committees, and that's on August 30th as well as on Monday, August 31st. And as I just mentioned, on Wednesday, September 2nd, will be our celebration of Africa, and dinner will be a part of that evening. For those of you traveling into Johannesburg that have not had the opportunity to travel there before, we just want to let you know that there is a slight altitude of 5,700 feet. In Johannesburg, the air is very dry. So just keep that in mind. Even as Scott said, be preparing ahead of time. Drink lots of water. That will help with any kind of altitude change in the aridness of the temperatures as well as the environment and weather there. Just keep all these things in mind. Again, we're here to help you. Ginger Barbie, myself, we want to be available to you as you have questions. And please reach out to us so we can help you in whatever ways are needed. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to go over all these details. I know there's a lot to it, but again, we're here to help you serve however we can. And we look forward to seeing all of you in Johannesburg in just over 9 months.
Thank you so much, Becky. We really appreciate all the hard work you're doing to keep us organized and to get us there and back again safely. And you've just done a great job, and appreciate working with you as a part of our team. It's been great. I'm going to move along to talk about some of the important jobs that your delegation has to complete between now and the General Conference. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the delegate allocation, because this is an issue that people have raised concerns and questions about. And so the delegate allocation is based on the number of churches and full-time equivalent pastors in each conference. The churches is 1/3 of the formula, and the full-time equivalents is 2/3 of the formula. In Costa Rica, we had 330 delegates. We have moved up to 400 with a plus or minus 5% factor. So anywhere between 380 and 420 delegates will be what we have in South Africa. So we gave you a preliminary allocation of delegates, a projection, this last March. And we're operating based on that temporarily until we get the final numbers. The numbers are going to be those that are in effect on December 31st. So the number of churches in each annual conference and the number of full-time equivalents in each conference as of December 31st will determine what the delegate allocation is. And so it's important that those numbers be accurate. So make sure that you, as a conference superintendent, have reviewed the church list and the FTEs for your conference. You can be working on that even now and get that done early so that it's there by December 31st, and that will help us very much. Once we have those numbers, and the conference superintendents actually have until January 21st to fill out those numbers. Again, we'd like you to be done early if we can. Once we have those numbers, the legislative process team takes those numbers and formulates the new allocation. It's not a subjective decision, it's based on math. And so that's all determined based on the numbers that are there. Then that allocation is taken to the General Conference Commission, and then it's approved by the Connectional Council. So the deadline for final approval is March 3rd, but if we get the numbers in on time and we are able to process those quickly, we hope to be able to actually get those numbers approved by the middle of February. It just depends on when the various groups are meeting and making sure that we have those. Now, between now and then, there are going to be changes in the number of delegates in some of the delegations. The very small delegations that have only 2 delegates, there's probably not going to be any change to you. But other delegations might change. It's possible that a number of annual conferences will gain delegates, and these would come from your reserves. So alternates would then become delegates, and reserves would become alternates. So hopefully you elected some extra reserve delegates so that we can actually add those to your delegation when time comes. It's also possible that a small number of U.S. annual conferences could lose a delegate or two. And in that case, a delegate would become an alternate, and an alternate would become a reserve. And so if you are an alternate, especially if you're like the last alternate in your delegation, you might want to hold off making your airfare reservations until that final allocation, just to make sure that we have the correct number of delegates and the correct number of alternates. It's a lot easier to wait and to make those reservations when we're sure than to make them now and then have to change them later, and the cost of that that will entail. So that's how delegate allocation will be done. If you have questions about that, feel free to put those in the Q&A part. Now I'd like to talk about security briefly. Security at Johannesburg is very safe. The environment is safe. We've had people visit there from the General Conference Commission, and they're telling us it's nothing to worry about, and that the access to the convention center will be controlled on all of our floors, and our access to our floor is controlled. So you have to have a wristband in order to access our area. So people that are not registered will not be able to access the area where we are having our conference. So again, that's another security feature. The wristbands this time will not be the rubber ones. They're going to be kind of like, for the U.S. at least, delegates are familiar with like a hospital wristband that you get if you have to spend time in the hospital. They're kind of like a very heavy-duty paper. They will not be able to be removed. So you'll leave them on for the whole 9 days, and then you'll cut them off at the end. So those are necessary in order to maintain security. And we would ask that you please cooperate with the marshals to show your wristband at each entry point. Don't be grumpy about it, please. We'd like you to let everybody cooperate together on that. So that's kind of security, how that will handled. Now I'd like to talk about the General Conference Administrative Committees. The administrative committees, and we'll look at what each one of them does in a moment. But these are made up of General Conference delegates that are nominated by each delegation. So it's very important. Each delegation should submit nominees, a nominee for each of the committees. And you should share the nominations between clergy and lay. They shouldn't be all one or all the other. The nominations are due February 2nd, and then the nominations committee, the Connectional Council will be electing these committees based on the nominations that you present. Tragically, in Costa Rica, there were quite a few annual conferences that did not submit any nominees for these committees, and so you weren't represented. So if you don't submit nominees, you won't be on the committees. So please do submit nominees for these committees. I realize there are probably a few delegations that won't be elected yet by February 2nd, and I am sorry that you won't be able to participate on that, but you will have other opportunities as well. Now, what are the administrative committees? The Agenda Committee meets at General Conference. It consists of 8 delegates, plus it also includes the chair of each legislative committee. And what they do is they determine each day's agenda. What are we going to talk about today? What legislation are we going to deal with? Which committees are ready to present their petitions? All that kind of thing is determined by the Agenda Committee. The Credentials Committee meets at General Conference. It consists of 8 delegates, and it deals with if there are any controversies or questions about whether a particular delegate is qualified to serve as a delegate. Last time we didn't have any of that, and I hope we don't have any again. Everybody follows the rules, we won't have any trouble. But if, in case there is a question about whether a particular delegate is eligible to serve, that would be the Credentials Committee. The Journal Committee is 3 delegates, and they meet both at General Conference and after. They review the daily minutes of the proceedings of the General Conference to ensure that they are correct and accurate. And after General Conference, they assist me in compiling the revised Book of Doctrines and Discipline. So this is a very important committee that deals with a lot of detail and a lot of things having to do with words. So keep that in mind when you nominate people for that committee. The Nominations Committee, it consists of 8 delegates, and they meet before General Conference via Zoom. And we go over all of the nominations for the general church commissions and councils and recommend nominees for those. So we need a broad representation on that nominations committee, and it's a committee that works really hard for a short period of time before the General Conference. In fact, it's really this spring that they work, toward late spring. And so their work is done well before we get to Johannesburg. The Reference Committee meets before and at General Conference as needed. 8 delegates. They determine, they ratify the assignment of petitions to the particular legislative committees. And at General Conference, sometimes the legislative committee will say, you know, we have this petition that really we think belongs at a different committee. And so that the Reference Committee can consider that recommendation and move petitions from one committee to another as needed. The Courtesies Committee we are going to not have this time, so you don't need to worry about nominating anybody for that. Now I'd like to talk about the General Church Commissions and Councils. The administrative committees are made up of delegates to General Conference. The General Church Commissions and Councils are not limited to delegates. They are made up of GMC members, clergy or lay, that are nominated by each delegation. So anybody who's a GMC member can serve on a General Church Commission and Council. You don't have to be a General Conference delegate to do so. Each annual conference is requested to submit up to 16 nominees per annual conference, and at least half of those nominees must be lay. Each nominee should be designated for 1 or 2 of the commissions. So you can't submit somebody and say, well, any one of the 8 commissions they can serve on. No, we'd like to know, what are you specifically equipped to serve on? What are your gifts and abilities? What are your experiences? What are your qualifications? Why should you be picked to serve on a particular commission? And that's what you would say in your 100-word biographical statement. Each nominee needs to submit that, a 100-word statement saying, this is why I should serve on these particular commissions. The deadline for those submissions is March 3rd. So there's a lot of work to be done in those first 2 months of 2026, and you'll want to make sure that you get at that. Now, what happens to these nominees is that, and we'll go to the next slide, nominations committee formulates a slate for each commission. We take all the nominations that come in from all the annual conferences and we work through them and we figure out what would be a balanced slate to present for each of the commissions. And we consider geographical diversity, we consider racial and ethnic diversity, we consider gender diversity, we consider age diversity. So a lot of different things go into making up these slates. And we prioritize, though, even with all that, we prioritize members' gifts and experiences to make sure that we have people that are really qualified and called to serve on each of the commissions. So the nominations committee winnows it down to, okay, these are the people we recommend to be elected. Now, everyone who's nominated for a commission or council will be printed in the pre-conference workbook and the first daily journal. But those that are recommended by the nominations committee will have an asterisk, so you will know for sure these are part of the slate that was recommended. But you can vote for somebody who's not on the slate. They'll be presented for nomination as well. These persons are then elected by a majority vote by the General Conference. And the nominations, we get them from you by March 3rd. Then the nominations committee has 2 months from March 3rd to May 1st to figure out what the slate will be. And May 1st we publish it so that you can begin to consider who you want to vote for all these various commissions and councils. Now, what are the commissions and councils? Let's go to the next slide. And you'll see the list there, and it's also found in the plan of organization and the covenant of General Conference. You'll see the list. The various councils and commissions that we are going to be electing: the Connectional Council, which is the governing body of the church in between general conferences; the Kingdom Advancement, which incorporates the areas of evangelism, missions, and church planting; the Discipleship Doctrine and Just Ministry Commission; the Ministry and Higher Education Commission; Finance, Administration, Pensions, and Benefits; General Conference Commission, they planned the General Conference, obviously; the Ecumenical Relations Commission; the Conferences Commission, and this commission deals with admitting new annual conferences. They've been working very hard to, as new annual conferences have come along, to be able to admit those conferences into the denomination and help them get set up. Then there's the Global Episcopacy Committee that makes up the people that kind of oversee the whole episcopacy. And then there's the Connectional Council on Appeals, which is the body that decides on interpretation of the Book of Doctrines and Discipline and kind of the church law matters that we deal with. So these are the general church commissions and councils. Okay, well, let's go to the next slide and see what we've got there. Okay, one more. Whoops. Oh, I see what happened. Okay. Legislative committees. Let's talk about legislative committees. Let's back up one more. Okay. So all the petitions are divided into 8 legislative committees. And each legislative committee is made up of between 35 and 65 delegates in each. How you get on the legislative committee is important. Each delegate will need to choose their top 3 preferences. Scott alluded to this in his presentation, and what you will need to do is submit to us what are your top 3 committees of interest. And it would be helpful if you, especially if you come from a larger delegation, to work together with your delegates so that you are parceled out to the various legislative committees Not everybody's on one legislative committee. You've got good representation on all of them. Then from the preferences, so the preferences have to be submitted by May 1st. So that's your deadline for submitting preferences. The delegates are then assigned based on your preferences, based on your expertise, and also on your geographical and lay and clergy balance. This has been probably the one area where people have had the most questions and concerns. How do I get on the legislative committee that I want to be on? Why did I get assigned to a committee that I maybe wasn't that interested in? The reason is because we have limits on the number. For example, last time we had over 90 delegates who wanted to be on the Episcopacy Committee to deal with the bishop's issues. If we have a limit of 65, that means we had to take 25 of you off of that committee and put you on a different committee. And there were some committees that not that many people wanted to be on. Maybe 20 or 25 people wanted to be on. We needed more people on those committees, so we had to move people onto those committees. So that's one consideration. Another consideration is there were a lot of U.S. delegates on some committees, and not very many from outside the U.S., and we needed more balance. And so some of the U.S. delegates had to be moved off in order to make room for delegates from outside the U.S. So these are the kind of things that we consider. There's also the lay and clergy balance, getting close to somewhat a balanced number of lay and clergy. It's a very complicated kind of process, and that's why you may end up on a committee that you didn't really prefer to be on. The goal here is to, first of all, if possible, give everyone their first choice committee. It's not possible for everyone. But at least if not your first choice, at least your second choice, and then a few people last time had their third choice committee. That's why it's important that you give us all three preferences. We had some people last time who only gave their first choice, and if they couldn't be on their first choice committee, we just had to pick one and give it to you. And so if you want some say in which committee that you're on, please give us all three preferences that you have. Now, what happens to all those preferences? The legislative process team will work through the requests and the membership of all the legislative committees and put together a recommended assignment. And the General Conference Commission then reviews those assignments and approves them. And that will happen in the course of a month. During the month of May, we'll be doing this so that by June 1st, you will know which legislative committee you are on. Let's go to the next slide and look at the legislative committee summer meeting. During the summer, each legislative committee will meet, probably within the time frame of June 15th to the 30th. We will meet virtually. And at that meeting, you will elect officers, chair, vice chair, secretary, and if desired, you could elect subcommittee chairs as well. And you will receive training in parliamentary procedure and our rules. So this is a very important meeting that you should make plans to attend. We will run a doodle poll to find out when people are available so that we can hopefully schedule the meetings at a time when most people are available. We are probably looking at early morning, like 8 o'clock Central Time, similar to the time of this meeting. That would be the time possibly that most of those committees would meet. And a bishop will convene the meeting and oversee the election of officers and the training. Then those that are elected officers will have a training sometime in the time frame of early July, and you can then begin organizing the committee's work so that by the time you get to Johannesburg, you have a plan for how your legislative committee is going to function. So that's legislative committees. I'm going to circle back to the Episcopal elections. I think we missed a slide there. Oh, here it is. Okay. So Episcopal elections, all the information that they need for Episcopal elections is requested by March 15th. As Scott mentioned, the actual technical deadline is May 15th, but we believe that that's cutting it too close. We need more time to process everything, so please get it in by March 15th. What do you need to provide? Each delegation needs to elect 2 people to serve on an area episcopacy committee, 1 clergy and 1 lay. That's the first thing you need to do. That area episcopacy committee will lead the process of determining what each episcopal area consists of and interviewing prospective bishops. So that committee is a very, very influential committee. And then the next thing that you need to provide as a delegation is a list of your top 10 annual conferences for your episcopal area. So what are the 10 conferences that you would be willing to work with, and in order of preference? And then the area episcopacy committee, in conjunction with the global episcopacy committee, will come up with some recommendations regarding that. The third piece of information you need to supply is nominees for the office of bishop. You get up to 1 nominee from your annual conference and up to 1 nominee from outside your annual conference. And this is, you need to nominate an ordained elder. Just so that you remember, in order to be bishop, you have to be an ordained elder. And so you can nominate up to 2 people, 1 from in your annual conference and 1 from outside. Now, if you don't have someone to nominate, that's perfectly fine. The fewer nominees, the better, in a sense, because with 50-some annual conferences, we could have 100 different nominees. That's hard to whittle down to the number of probably around 10 bishops we're going to be electing, something like that, 8 to 10. So if that's the case, we don't need to overwhelm ourselves with the number of nominees. But you are able to nominate up to 2 people. Now, as Scott mentioned, there's a discernment guide on the website. There's also an explanation of the whole episcopal process. I'm not going into detail on that. I'm just giving you deadlines here. And so please look all that information over and be familiar with it and enable your delegation to fully participate in the episcopal election process. Now let's talk about voting devices. We're going to be using the same voting devices that we used in 2024. There will be a training that we have during the first plenary session that will help us to get a handle on operating those. And the main reason for choosing this method of voting was to protect the security of the voting from potential hacking. If you recall, back in 2022, when we were planning for the 2024 General Conference, there was a lot of, in the U.S. at least, a lot of concern about election security, and people did not want to use the internet for elections. So we went with a system that does not use the internet. It allows us, if we do need to use the internet, we can for a few delegates who may not be able to get visas to come to South Africa. But we are very hopeful that we will be able to have 100% participation by all the delegates in Johannesburg. But just in case, we are prepared to operate a hybrid version that allows for participation for delegates that cannot make it to Johannesburg because of visa issues. So that's why we have chosen the system we are using. There were some software glitches in 2024. Those have been corrected. We've done extensive testing with the system. It's been used at an annual conference for elections, and it worked well. And so we also have a better understanding of how to use the devices to deal with the delays that we experienced in Johannesburg and potentially devices that weren't registering their vote. So we don't believe that's going to be a problem this time around. We are optimistic that everything is going to go well. But please pray for technology to work. Pray that everything works, not only for the voting devices, but the live streaming and all of the computer stuff that has to happen. Please make that an element of your prayers. Then I'd like to finish by talking about the schedule. The General Conference schedule, just a brief overview. Day 1, we start on Sunday with opening worship. It's going to be amazing. The plenary session will then include a renominating ballot for interim bishops. Remember, the 6 interim bishops that were elected in Costa Rica are only 3 of them are able to stand for election for a re-election as a bishop. And so we need a ballot to determine which 3. So that will happen on the first day, also the Episcopal address, and then by afternoon, by mid-afternoon, we hope to break into legislative committees, and they'll run afternoon and evening. On day 2, we will have opening worship that will include a concert of prayer, and then we'll break into legislative committees for the whole rest of the day. There won't be a plenary session on day 2. On day 3, we will have a morning plenary to deal with any matters that are ready to deal with from committees. We hope to have some consent agendas and things like that we can work through, and perhaps a little bit of legislation. And then we'll break into legislative committees for the whole rest of the day. By the end of Tuesday, legislative committees need to finish their work. We did provide more time, actually slightly more time for legislative committees than we had in Costa Rica. So we're optimistic that you're going to be able to finish your work. All right, day 4. Wednesday, we're going to have plenary that begins with the first bishop elections. We're still working on the election process, the mechanics of it, and how that's going to work. Actually, we think that we might be able to do it electronically, and if so, it should go more quickly than we originally thought. And so we may just finish those elections of bishops on Wednesday if we can do it that way. And then we will break at dinner for the Africa Culture Night, and the whole evening is taken up with that Culture Night. On day 5, we will have plenary the whole day, including continued bishop elections. There will be a celebration for retiring and newly elected bishops that takes place on that day. And then the last day on Friday, day 6 on Friday, we will have plenary all day. We may run into the evening if we need to. We want to make sure that we get everything done, so be prepared for a long day on Friday. Then on Saturday, go to the next slide. On Saturday, we have plenary to finish the elections and all other business. Actually, the elections will start on Friday, so we'll be electing commissions and things like that starting on Friday. And then we'll finish all of that on Saturday. By mid-afternoon, we will be adjourning and then having a consecration service for our newly elected bishops on Saturday, and that will conclude the conference. Then on Sunday, we do the finish, the takedown, and people's departures. Most of the departures, at least for U.S. people, will be from in the evening. So we will have time during the day on Sunday to get situated and organized for departure. So that is what I wanted to share with you. And so thank you very much for your attention to all of this detail. I'm sure you have questions, and so we're going to turn to Diane to see what questions you have.
Tom appears to be a little frozen, but hopefully he will unfreeze and join. Oh, Tom, sorry, you cut out when you were saying thank you, so I'll let you finish.
I just thank you for your attention to all these details, and I'm sure we will have more information as we go along, and so stay tuned for more. But what questions do you have for us, Diane?
Well, we have quite a few, and so we have about 20 minutes left, so we will make it through as many as we can. But like I mentioned earlier, those that we cannot address in this time period, we will make sure we've got them all compiled in one document, and we will get those answered and send those out to you. Also, we will be sending out the link for this as well. So we will, Becky, I think the first couple questions will come to you. And that is, how long will we have to register if we are already delegates? Or do we have to register if we're already delegates? Let me say that.
Okay, I'll try to answer that. Again, registration will not open for delegates until December 10th. And then the deadline, people can register all the way up until August 10th. We'll have quite a lengthy period of time for registration. So if you don't register in December, you'll get in January when we go to the next phase of registration invites to the next categories and groups. If you haven't yet had an opportunity to register, you'll get another invite to register, just to kind of close the net if there's any holes. So you'll continue to get an invite to register until time in which we have your registration.
Great.
Dee,
And
if
then
I
we,
could jump,
oh,
can I jump
sorry.
in there? Just a reminder that we established July 1st as a deadline for people to get their visas. So
Yes.
you can't register after July 1st if you need a visa.
Yes.
Okay, so there's another couple of these same questions is that will it be possible for them to register all of their delegation as once, or does each person have to register independently?
You are able to register as one, but you will have to have a unique email for every registrant. And you'll have to know if they're attending with any guests, their roommate preference, their, yeah. So I would encourage it to be more individually, but if you would like to register everyone collectively, we'll set a time to meet with that annual conference and to do that from the back end.
Great. And then a couple other questions then is that, when it works with Uniglobe, do they have to have Uniglobe book their flight? And then what do they do if they're bringing their spouse and they would like to have them on the same flight?
Yes. So again, in the registration process, you'll indicate guests, which can be spouse. Some I know are traveling with the child, or again, for those delegates outside of the U.S., they'll need to indicate roommate preference. And then when you do your booking form, you will indicate travel for you and your guest, whoever you have registered with you, and make arrangements for them to travel along with you.
Okay, and then we've had a couple of questions about passports. So if you can maybe just share again just what that looks like around passport guidelines. We have someone whose passport expires 2/26, so they're waiting on a renewed passport. So can they go ahead and register with the current? And then also, what about a U.S. delegate that lives in another country? Do they follow the U.S. Delegate protocol?
So regarding passport, you will have to wait until you have a valid passport that does not expire before December 31st before you are able to make any of your registration or flight. So you'll have to wait until your new one comes, and then at that time you can register and do your booking form. If you are US and you are traveling or live outside of, you most likely will need to apply for a visa, because if it, even those of you that may be traveling from the US over to other locations, as we said, for pre-conference mission work, you will have to most likely apply for a visa because your point of origin is not here within the US. And again, we can, Ellie Deco from South Africa is our international relations coordinator, and Ellie will work more specifically with anyone that's asking questions about that. But yes, if you are a U.S. delegate, but your point of origin is not the U.S., you will need to apply for a visa. And you'll need to see the timeline that's listed on the um, timeline on our website to indicate all of those application deadlines for passport, for visa, securing your visa, all those types of things.
Great. Okay, so another question. Let's see. So for the African celebration night, when you say dress for your own culture or dress up, do you dress for your own culture or do you wear African regalia?
You can do whatever you are wanting to do. We have no parameters to that. We just want it to be an evening, a celebration. And so yes, if you want to use your own cultural dress, we invite that.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Becky. There's still some other questions here for you, but we might save those for later. And because there are some questions for Tom, um, regarding our full FTE based on GMC ordained ministers, or would an FTE minister who is not yet ordained count, like hired but not appointed? Oh, Tom hopped off. Okay, never mind. Well, we will save those questions. There is one for you, Scott, or it's really just a comment. It says, Scott, it's my understanding that current GC committee members are eligible for reelection. So I do believe that is the case, and it would just be the will of, the nominating and how all of that process works. Okay, so we did have also a question about, let's see. I will say there's several questions about the episcopacy process. And so I wanted to just make a statement is that we are probably going to need another hour and a half just to talk about that process. The work of the Global Episcopacy Committee is such a tremendous load, and they have spent so many hours and days and months probably at this point just really discerning what that process looks like for us. And they have laid out very beautifully a flow chart, thanks to Tyson Hines and his great work, and Chris Ritter, and just that entire group. If there is also another group that would welcome any prayers from our church, it's definitely that group, because they are carrying, it's not lost on them how important this process is, and for the history of our church, and for all of you as you're in your annual conference. And so they are not taking that lightly. And so we welcome you to just cover them in prayers daily, individually, as a conference, as a church, as they continue to work through that process. And so we have probably a very similar format to what we've had today lined up. We know that there are several questions around that process, what that looks like, how we could maybe even help you approach it as an annual conference. And so we are working with that group very closely to figure out how we can communicate that. And so we will continue to do so. So just know that we know that there's several questions around that. And instead of rather trying to dig in a little deeper during this time, we wanted to make sure that we allowed separate space for that, because it can be a little more involved. So just know that that is on the process as well. And let's see if there's any other questions on here that, since we do not have Tom at the moment, that I want to make
Diane,
sure. Okay, well, yes,
I
Scott, go
received a
ahead.
text. I think the question talking about commission members, not committee members. So if somebody's serving on a commission currently, can they be reelected? So it's just going through the nominating process.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. There were two different ones, so thank you for that. Um, okay, and then also there's a couple of questions aimed at Ginger Barbie, our registration concierge. So just know we will make sure we get these to Ginger to just kind of help with some of those individual registration questions. Becky, are the hotel prices listed in U.S. currency?
Yes, they are. And we did that specifically because those delegates outside of the US are not financially responsible for their hotel rooms. So, yes, the prices listed in the slide are US dollars.
Great. Thank you so much. I also see a question that says, at General Conference, are we going to have an interpreter for the people living with permanent disability, like those that are deaf and dumb? I'm going to just go with deaf there. And if that is a need for those in the room, we will make sure absolutely to have that available. So if that is something that we need, if you could just let us know, we will add that to the group. We want to make sure that everyone is available. And are we to understand what is going on in the room, just like we would with our language services? So please just let us know. And
Diane, if I might, there is a place within the registration where they can indicate those special needs and services that might be necessary. So we just encourage you to put it there so that we can indeed work with you to provide those things.
Perfect. And also, Becky, they just asked, can you please repeat when we need to apply for visa if we're from the USA?
Visas are not necessary for the USA. The only reason you would need, if you are a US delegate, the only reason you would need to apply for a visa is if your point of origin to Johannesburg is not U.S. soil. So U.S. delegates are not required to apply for a visa. Your names will be provided to our U.S. Embassy in Johannesburg just for courtesy, but you are not required to have a visa, only if your travel is going to originate from somewhere outside of the U.S.
Great. Thanks, Becky. Hi, Tom. Welcome back. Just in time because we have some questions for you. So,
Great.
yeah, let's start with are FTE based on only GMC ordained ministers, or would an FTE minister who is not yet ordained count? Hired but like not appointed.
Yes, it's pastors, not ordained clergy. So anybody who's serving as a pastor counts as a pastor. Could be a supply pastor, could be a lay pastor, could be anybody who's not ordained, a licensed local pastor, transitional local pastor. They all count toward the FTEs. And there's a definition of what an FTE is that I have shared with the conference superintendents and will share again. That's based on, so many hours a week is quarter time, so many hours a week is half time, so many hours is 3/4, and so many hours is full time. So based on that definition, people should be able to answer that question.
Yeah, great. And then we have some questions about the admin committees. Says, are alternate delegates eligible for those committees? Are they to be nominated as well as for commissions?
Alternates are not eligible if it's only delegates. And so unless the alternate
For
becomes a
committees,
delegate,
right?
pardon me? So
For the committees.
for the committees, it has to be a delegate, not an alternate.
Perfect. But then the general commissions, it's really any church members, right, that
Correct.
can be
The
nominated.
general commissions is anybody. Yeah.
Perfect. So, and while you were off, Tom, I explained a little bit more about our plans to help with the global episcopacy process and our episcopacy nominating and all of those, and that we're going to save those questions because there's quite a bit on that. And so, let's see. It says, if a conference superintendent is a delegate, are they going to be accommodated alone? Do we know? Is that just their accommodations?
That's a
I
Becky
suppose?
question. I don't remember that. Do you?
Conference superintendents are considered self-pay if they are U.S. And if they are a delegate outside of the U.S., um, that is something that I do not think as a General Conference Commission we have addressed. So I will take that question. If somebody can indicate where that question came from, if we can address that at a level, I honestly do not know the answer to that. So that's something we would have to discuss.
I will highlight that accordingly and we will address. So, we've had quite a few, I think, express how helpful this was through the chat, and they have asked if we were going to have anything like this similar. And so there's a couple of things I want to share. One, we do have plans on doing something similar like this. We have chatted about having just general open, like I would say, office hours, where maybe Tom and Becky and other key leaders who could possibly answer a lot of these questions for you just say, hey, we're jumping on Zoom or wherever during this time for these many hours. Feel free to jump on and we will answer your questions. So we are looking at making that happen. We also are, our website that I mentioned at the beginning is going to be what I would call your hub for all the information and things that come up, all general conference related. We'll continue to build that out. We are also launching our Beauty of Holiness podcast in January, where we are hoping to then take a lot of, I would even say, these questions. This is a great starting point, and actually maybe have an episode dedicated to each of those where we bring in those that can really answer those in a thoughtful, meaningful way for you guys. And so that's another way that we are hoping to help share more information with you. General conference there's a lot of business, but there's a lot of great things outside of the business that happen, as far as worship, as far as prayer, as far as just that community of us Global Methodists coming together. And so we're also going to touch on that in different ways as well. We had one of the questions asked, like where you can submit your prayer request. We will share that information with you as well. We have an incredible prayer team who is already hard at work putting together a concert of prayer for General Conference, but also we have the prayer guides. They've already started issuing. So we invite you to pray with us, leading and following those guides leading up to General Conference. They have an email address, which we will get, and I will share with you guys as well for you to submit those prayer requests. All that to say, we know it's a lot to absorb. We ourselves have a lot to absorb as well and work through it. The General Conference Commission has a lot. There's a lot of moving parts. And so we are sensitive to that, and we know that, and just know that we hear you, and we are doing what we can to help communicate to all of you the best that we can and help get that information to you. Again, we're going to share the recording of today in English, as well as Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, and French. And so you guys will be welcome to go and watch it back. We are hoping that even Tom's delay with our software that we use, that we can maybe even like fix some of those technical glitches to maybe help a little bit with that. But we will be sharing all of this with you so that you can refer it back or refer back to it for any of your other questions or concerns or things that might come up. So we get that. We know it's a lot. That's why we're starting now. Right, Tom? Tom's like, this is why we're doing it in November, so that we can start very much to help with that. Tom, we have, it says, page 3 and 4 of the plan of organization discusses the administrative committees, and everyone begins with the number of delegates who make up the committees. And again, alternates are not eligible to serve on admin committees or legislative committees. I read that because we've had several questions. I guess in 2024, Tom, were alternates able to serve on administrative committees?
No, they were not.
Okay. So definitely in 2026, you will have to be a delegate. And so we will continue to just kind of help reinforce that. Okay, so before we have 2 minutes left. And so I, again, just want to thank everyone for joining us. And again, we will have this recording. We will get these questions, everything answered as much as we can. But how I would like to end today is, Scott, if you don't mind, can I just invite you to pray over us as a denomination, this group as our delegates and our reserves, conferences, superintendents, commission members, everyone. Let's just pray. If you don't mind covering all of us, this event and everything, just in prayer. I think that'd be a great way to close out.
Absolutely. Honored to do that. Thank you. And thank you all for joining in this time. God, we just thank you that we get to be a part of what you're doing on earth, particularly in this new movement and expression of Methodism. Holy Spirit, we have been so blessed to feel the fresh wind of your Spirit move amongst us, within us, and across us. We know that you are doing something special, and we want to steward that well. Lord, thank you for Tom and the other leaders guiding this process. The details are so important. Lord, just be with the respective leaders and the delegations. Give them guidance and wisdom. Continue to move through all of this. Lord, we thank you for Diane and her team and the communication, such a critical point, and continue to give wisdom and guidance how to do that with Becky, and how to put all the details together and to make all the moving parts to fit together so seamlessly. God, we want to continue to join what you're doing. Lead us and guide us. Lead us as conferences. Lord, we live and move in different parts around the world, and yet we are one in you and one with each other as sisters and brothers in Christ. Lead us and guide us. Holy Spirit, continue to do your work in us and through us. We thank you. And Lord, we just know that you are moving. Guide us and direct us, that we may make an impact right where we are, where we live, learn, work, and play in our local locations. And together, we're able to reach the world for Christ as we spread scriptural holiness. Lord, lead us and guide us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Scott. And again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We had over 200 folks. I think we got up to I think at one point 210-ish. So that is an incredible, and we held majority of that number for the entire time. So that tells me that this was I would call it a success, but really that it was a value, and hopefully we were able to answer some questions and just kick off this general conference season in a way that knows that we are trying to be intentional of getting that information there, and we will continue to do so. So many blessings among all of you as you go about your week. And we, as I know GMC staff, are praying for all of you and your role as delegate, alternate, whatever that may look like for General Conference. Also, one last plug. If you know somebody that would want to volunteer and join us in General Conference in some way, shape, or form, we welcome them. And so I will share that application is on our website, but I will share it again in the chat. But we would love to have you guys come, or if you can't, know somebody that just wants to be a little piece of the event in South Africa, we would love to have them. So we will share that with you. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us.